Well, good day. International Women's Day today, March 8th, 2022. Excellent. We're so glad you're here. Welcome. And when we celebrate International Women's Day, we also celebrate our partners, the men in our life, our children, our communities, and the world. And so today's very, very special program is all about Dare Mighty Things Together. So that's our theme for today. Tomorrow, Dare Mighty Things for your business. And Thursday, Dare Mighty Things for your communities. And Friday, we get to put the cherry on top of our sundae and the big bow on this present with Dare Mighty Things for the world. So we have a really, really powerful program. Let me share a couple slides to get things going, and then we are going to hop right into our program. So with that, welcome to our C-Suite Network Women's Coaching and Consulting Council. And our theme is we think all women should be, could be, and can elevate themselves to being the thought leader, the expert, the go-to person that they really can be. So today we get the great, great privilege to showcase and highlight two of our esteemed faculty members, Dr. Debi Silber, phenomenal person. I'll do a formal introduction for her in just a moment. And of course, Sheila A. Anderson. So we are so thrilled that all of you are here. Really, we've been thinking about this and planning this program for months. And if I haven't mentioned it yet, I'm Kathleen Caldwell. I get the great opportunity to take a deep breath. And how many of you could use a little deep breath? You've probably already had a complete day in already. Although here in the Midwest, we're only halfway through our business day, but for many of you, you've been going at it very early in anticipation of International Women's Day. So I'm an author speaker. I have the Women's Success Accelerator program, and I am a all-in person on C-Suite Network. So we really highlight C-Suite Network. We are a council within C-Suite Network, and we just get this great privilege to highlight and showcase really smart women, and of course, smart men and families, communities, etc. So we're so glad you're here. And we are celebrating International Women's Day. And it's important, I think, also to mention to you, International Women's Day has been observed since 1908. I'm wondering how many of you knew that. And just kind of curious, give me a little sparkle fingers if you knew 1908. Yeah, pretty powerful day that on March 8th, 15,000 women came to New York City and they got a movement together, a rally cry, asking the world, telling the world that, hey, they wanted more in their life. And so the same for today is we're ready for more. International Women's Day is a day for all of us to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. And what I love to do as well is that on March the 8th, we get to raise awareness, especially about women's equality, lobby for accelerated gender parity, and also put a focus on women's charities and women's businesses. So ladies, the good news is today is your day. How about that? So with that, I would love to share our theme for today and for the whole week is dare. The word dare, I absolutely love it because we're not talking about being a daredevil like Evel Knievel or anything crazy. No one's asking you today or this week to jump off an airplane. Although if you want to, you can, okay. But we highly recommend be safe. Don't do anything like ultra crazy this week. But it's a verb and a noun. And I love it because it's all about performing the challenge to perform an action, especially as a proof of courage. Because ladies, we've all got this deep down courage inside of us. And also to confront boldly or defy. And then finally, the verb, of course, being in action is having the courage to contend against, venture, or try. So this whole word dare is, of course, it's an act or an instance of daring challenge, or imaginative or vivacious boldness in the way of being daring. Thank you, Merriam-Webster's Dictionary Online. So I'd love for you to put in the chat, what is it that you're inspired today on International Women's Day to dare for yourself? This is the theme for today, dare mighty things for yourself. So give me some loving in the chat, put in the chat what you're inspired to dare today. Because we know, as the marvelous, daring woman Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So we have a tremendous opportunity to dare mighty things, and we don't have to do it alone. We get to do it together. So with that, I would like to introduce two of our esteemed faculties, and Dr. Debi Silber is going to present and talk first. And so I'm going to come off our slides and again, welcome you. It's so good to see you. I don't like looking at slides, but sometimes it kind of sets the good context here. But I would love to introduce you to Dr. Debi, because this is a great opportunity. As Debi and I were speaking about today's program, she is an expert in transformation, in reinvention, in doing bold things. Dr. Debi Silber is founder of PBT, the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. She's a holistic psychologist, a health, mindset, and personal development expert. She's the author of Trust Again and her latest book, From Hardened to Healed. Highly recommend getting this book, ladies. Super, super excellent. Debi is a multi-TEDx speaker. She's a speaker around the world, global thought leader. And I must say, I'm so delighted to say, Debi, you are one of my nicest friends, a person who I highly respect. And it was just an easy thought to have you come on and talk about the importance of, if we're going to dare mighty things, how do we let go of the things that are in the way? So I'd like to turn the podium over to you, Debi, and please take yourself off mute. Let's give Dr. Debi Silber a round of applause. Welcome, yay.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for even having me here today. It's such an honor to be with all of you. Yes, when it comes to transformation, here's the thing. My specialty is betrayal. And you're like, betrayal? What? Yeah, betrayal lends itself to creating an entirely new identity. You leave behind what no longer serves, and you create a version of you that never would have had an opportunity to exist had that experience not happened. And when I talk about betrayal, I'm really talking about the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. Every relationship has them. We even had a rule today. I was going to show up and speak. And if I didn't, I would have betrayed you. Now, wouldn't have broken you, of course, would never broken, bent, you know what I mean? But the way it works is, the more we trust, the more we depend on someone, the deeper the betrayal. So a child, for example, right, and the parent does something awful, that's going to have a different level of cleanup than, let's say, a coworker taking credit for your idea. Still a betrayal, different level of cleanup. But either way, here's the thing. A betrayal affects every single area of life. And while we may think, well, it may just be affecting relationships, that's not the case at all. I'll tell you how it shows up in health, work, relationships. Ready? In relationships, I'll see it in one of two ways. The first is in repeat betrayals. The faces change, but it's the same thing. And you go from boss to boss to boss, friend to friend to friend, partner to partner to partner. Say, what the heck, is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There's a profound lesson needing to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is for you. Until and unless you get that, you will have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. The other way we see it in relationships is, and maybe this is you, the big wall goes up. You're like, nope, been there, done that, not letting anybody close to me again. We think it's coming from a place of strength. It's not, it's coming from fear. That hurts so much that we're not taking the chance at risking that and being that vulnerable because we just don't want the risk of that happening again, right? We see it in health. People go to the most well-meaning doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. At the root of it, very often is an unhealed betrayal. We see it at work. People want that raise or promotion. They deserve it, but their confidence was shattered in the betrayal. So they don't have the confidence to ask, and they're bitter and resentful instead. Or they want to be a team player, collaborative partner, right? But the person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do they trust that boss, that coworker, that collaborative partner? So it shows up everywhere. And of course, I mean, just to back up, and Kathleen said such wonderful things, but this is my 30th year in business. And as life would morph and change, so would business. There's no one I know of who says, I think betrayal is just a really good topic to study. No, you study because you have to, and I was no different. So I started in health and then mindset and then personal development. And then I had a really painful betrayal from my family. And I thought I did everything I needed to do to heal. And a few years later, it happened again. This time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through it, you're shocked, you're blindsided, you're devastated. Life as you've known it is no longer, right? So I got him out of the house, and I looked at the two experiences, and I thought, okay, well, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And I realized boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my own needs seriously. And I'm a big believer in that saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business, 50 years old. And I'm like, I'm going back for a PhD. I mean, I'm talking like, I didn't know how I was going to manage the time, how I was going to pay for it, nothing. But I was like, yeah, this is what I need to do. And while I was there, I did a study, and I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive? I had no idea this was going to happen. But that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changes everything we know about how to move through it. And Kathleen, if I have a little bit of time, I'm happy to share what those discoveries are. Would that serve?
Please do. That would be fantastic. And then we're going to have your opportunity to, I mean, this is so important, because if we're going to dare mighty things together, we've got to be able to put the past in the past and deal with these past betrayals. So your research, Debi, very important. Thank you for presenting.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to close the loop on the experiences, the research also proved, and what I've learned myself, rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, and that's what I did with my family, it wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new. I'm talking from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as to completely transform people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids is our bridal party. So quickly, the discoveries. The first was that, betrayal felt like a very different kind of trauma for me. I'd been through death of a loved one. I've actually been through disease. And I was like, no, betrayal feels much different. But I didn't want to assume it was the same for everybody. So I asked my study participants, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, is it different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the entire self is shattered. Rejection, abandonment, confidence, belonging, worthiness, trust, they're shattered, and they all have to be rebuilt. So that type of healing needed its own name, which is now called Post-Betrayal Transformation, PBT. That's why it's the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. That was the first discovery. The second discovery was there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. Now, we've had easily over 60,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. Here's what's so interesting about that. And if we do have some time later on, I'm happy to share some of the statistics. But we've all heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof when it comes to betrayal. That's simply not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 15 years ago, feels like it happened yesterday. So we know time does not heal it. It needs a very specific type of protocol to heal, because it hits us physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It all needs to be healed. So that was the second discovery. The third, this one for me was the most exciting. And what we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that whole healed, rebuilt place of post-betrayal transformation, if we're going to go from one to the next, we're going to move through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. Now, what I know for sure from the research and what we see every day within the Institute is most people stop forever at stage 3. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. Kathleen, do you want me to run through the 5 stages?
Please do, Debbie. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Excellent.
And I want everybody to just kind of think to yourself, could this be me? Okay. So it's what we teach within the Institute. They're all mapped out in trust. Again, I'm going to give you a distilled version right here. Stage 1, this is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing. Bright, wonderful women, right? Because we know how to do that. And really neglecting the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. If a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over. Well, that's us. Stage 2. By far the scariest of all of the stages. Shock, trauma, D-Day, Discovery Day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. What happened? Well, what? Like, you can't wrap your mind around what you just learned. And your worldview has just been shattered. That's your mental model, the rules that prevent chaos, that govern you. Don't go there, trust this person, this is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment, everything you've known to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has truly bottomed out, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is terrifying, right? But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of whatever you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap, though, and see if this sounds familiar. This is where people get stuck, and here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, we're like, okay, this is good. No, it's not. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't even know there's a stage 4 or stage 5. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we start planting roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first is we start getting all those small self benefits. You know, you get a target for your anger, you get someone to blame, you get sympathy from everyone you tell your story to, right? So you start planting deeper roots. We're not supposed to do that, but we don't know. Now, because we're here longer than we should be, the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not all that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So we plant deeper roots. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, I see some of you shaking your heads, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, and this is the energy you're putting out. Well, like energy attracts like energy. So now you're calling situations and circumstances and relationships towards you to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go. Right here is where we resign ourselves. We're like, this stinks, but I better find a way to be okay with it. So here's where we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, reckless behavior, anything to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. We do that for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, that numbing in front of the TV you're doing, that overworking you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. And they would say, it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense? Raise your hand if that makes sense, please. Yeah, that's what From Hardened to Healed is, just for stage 3. Because I was like, what the heck? Everyone's getting stuck there. Anyway, if you're willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, a few things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Here's where transformation begins. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo the experience, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you start turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. And I always use the example of, if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. That's the sense of stage 4. You know, it's not, you haven't quite settled into this new space, but it's going to be okay. But this is what's interesting also. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be in that new space. And what I found was, if your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. Right here, you've outgrown them. So people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. If they don't rise, they don't come. Very common. When you've settled into the space, you've made it cozy, you've made it home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. The mind is healing. You're making new rules, new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. And you have a new worldview based on everything you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages. And you can see through that journey, how in the world are you supposed to be a rock star in your business when you're in that stage 2 or stuck in that stage 3? But when you're in those stages 4 and 5, that's where new businesses are born. That's where that version of you never would have had the opportunity to exist had the experience not happened. And if you ask me, that's trauma well served.
Really fantastic. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end of our session too. So start thinking about, the questions that you have for Dr. Debi. And, I think people sometimes associate betrayal with, relationships and maybe a significant partner, but I appreciate so much, Debi, that you've brought out betrayal is something that happens in so many different areas. It could be something so subtle as a client agreed to pay you on time and then they didn't, or partners, I know that I left my last job because it was a series of betrayals of commitments made and not kept. And, the values of the organization didn't match up. And so can you imagine how hard it was for me personally to go back into corporate and have a corporate coaching career, selling back, private coaching to an industry that I didn't trust anymore. I felt I was betrayed by. Exactly. So if you can relate to any of that, put it in the chat. Yeah. And Debi, what do you also see in the way of work, career, business? You've been involved with so many women who have healed this. What do you see are some other symptoms?
Oh, the symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can share them. So now I want to share symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome.
Yes,
this
great.
Men, women, just about every age group is represented, almost every country. Ready? Out of 60,000 people, 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. The most common physical symptoms: 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues, 63% have extreme fatigue. That's how you know your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. So that could be anything from, like, in the beginning, you can't hold food down. Later on, you're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues. That's anything from Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 70% walking around in a state of disbelief, 68% are unable to focus, 64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work. You still have to raise your kids, whatever it is you're doing. That's not even the emotional ones. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. Very common to bounce back and forth between those two emotions. 62% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. Just a few more. Here's why I wrote the book, Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but don't know how. Okay, what's even crazier about all those numbers I just shared, and those statistics are high. You didn't hear me say one that was 20%, 30%, right? Those stats aren't necessarily from a betrayal that happened recently. They could be from something that happened decades ago. So imagine something happened 30, 40, 50 plus years ago. That person may not know, care, or even remember. And you're walking around with gut issues, with anxiety, with hypervigilance, with an inability to feel safe or to trust. Based on that, that's not fair to you.
So Debi, next steps for our attendees, our participants, these awesome women here, what would be some next steps?
Yeah.
You know, I think as you were pointing out, understanding, and we're raising awareness to this, all of you, you know, that's what we want to raise awareness to say, this could be holding me back from daring mighty things together, you know? So, so how about a couple next steps, and we'll get into Q&A after Sheila shares.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I would say is out of the stages, find out what stage you're in, and then check your willingness, because one of the biggest needle movers to moving through the stages is your willingness. It doesn't matter the resources. I mean, we have everything within the PBT Institute. There's a roadmap for you, but if you're not willing, you're not going anywhere. So I would say, what benefit, this is going to sound really odd, what benefits do you have for staying stuck? And you may say, well, benefits? Well, yeah, you may feel, well, I like that attention I'm getting. I like that I have an outlet for my anger, right? Like, look, you have your story. Look, I had a very powerful story. All the most important people in my life all betrayed me, but look at a better story of now helping millions of people because of what we're doing with it. So, check at the benefit. What are the benefits you have for staying stuck? The other thing I would say is, actually, there's 4 questions that I'd invite you to write down. That's my way of saying write these down. The first one is, am I numbing or distracting? If so, how? Call yourself on it. Do you walk into the kitchen, you're not the least bit hungry, and you're just raiding the cabinets? Do you walk into a room, you put the TV on to drown out the sound of your own thoughts? Call yourself on it. The second question, what am I pretending not to see? Am I pretending not to see my relationship is in trouble? Am I pretending not to see, that health issue that needs my attention? Am I pretending not to see I hate my job? Third question, what's life going to look like in 5 to 10 years if I do nothing? Play it out. Play out that health issue, that relationship issue, that work issue. 5 to 10 years of doing exactly what you're doing today. And the fourth question, what could life look like in 5 to 10 years if I change now? Now, I'm not saying change is easy, but transformation begins when you tell yourself the truth.
Wow. Thank you so much. My goodness. So raising your awareness, and Debi, you are available. You've got your website. We'll put it in the chat, and we'll follow up with more resources for everyone, because, your quiz is so powerful. And, just to start the conversation, because we need to be ready to dare mighty things. And if we're not ready, if we're operating on this foundation of the unknowns, how successful will we be? It just won't be great, and it can be great. So yes. So ladies, take yourself off mute, please. And let's give Dr. Debi a round of applause. Woohoo! Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. So, we keep things moving here in the Women's Coaching and Consulting Council, big time. We keep everything moving. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Sheila A. Anderson. Sheila is a tremendous, tremendous thought leader. One of her many Sheila-isms that I love, and if you're not connected with both Dr. Debi and Sheila on LinkedIn and Facebook, please get connected with them. Sheila says, you are the chief experience officer of you. Maybe Sheila, you can talk more about this. Is in order to dare mighty things together, you are the chief experience officer of what you're having. So she'll talk more about that and about reinvention. But Sheila is an author. I helped her. I was her sister in writing this book. She wrote this book. It was a great journey. And ICU, the comprehensive guide to breathing life back into your personal brand. Sheila is a thought leader, a speaker, an author, a brand extraordinary expert. And Sheila, it's such a delight to turn the podium over to you. And reinvention. So let's take yourself off mute. Let's welcome Sheila.
Thank you. Gosh, Dr. Debi, you're going to be hard to follow. Just so many great nuggets. So thank you for sewing into us today. And thank you, Kathleen, for having me here. I'm super excited to be with you today. So we are talking about dear mighty things, and we're talking about reinvention. So let me start with this question. If I were to ask 5 of your closest friends what one word comes to mind when they think of you, what would they say? And if I were to ask a complete stranger those same words after they've interacted with you just for a few moments, what words do you think that they would use to describe you? And what are those words you never want used to describe you? And if you're like most people, you probably haven't given it that much thought. So my main question to you is this: how do you want others to experience you? What are those words that you want to come into mind when people think of you, or when they talk about you, or when they're referring you to other people? And everything that you do, everything you say, everything you communicate in your social media, on your blog posts, everything, how you present yourself on Zoom, how you present yourself out in public, all has to tie back to your word. And I call it your power word. So you could be leaving money on the table, ladies, with how you are showing up. And Dr. Debi talked to us about, reinvention and how we get ourselves out of that funk that we're in, and really a lot of that self-discovery. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about personal branding and how you can reinvent yourself through personal branding. So, we've heard a lot in society about the Great Resignation, right? The Great Resignation is everywhere. And what I think is happening with that Great Resignation is it really is becoming now the Great Reinvention. People are becoming more aware of what is important in their life and what do they want to do with their lives. And a lot of people are at mid-career and trying to determine, are there things that they haven't done? Are there goals that they want to achieve? How do they do that? Is there something that they need to change? Is there some skill set they have inside of them that they've never brought out or never shared with anyone? There's just so many ways that we can reinvent ourselves, and there's so many things that happen in our life that cause us to reinvent ourselves. So I am in the process of reinventing myself as well. I think we all go through those stages, and we never want to become stagnant. So we always have to be growing, always changing, always reinventing ourselves to stay relevant. So I come from over 25 years of corporate branding with experience, and very often in the corporate world, you see brands reinventing themselves all of the time. They're doing a rebrand, and it's to align that their organization for maybe some strategic growth. And it's no different for you, right? If you need to reinvent your personal brand, you probably want to focus maybe more on some strategic growth. Maybe you want a more future-facing path, or it could be you just no longer feel relevant in the space that you're at. Or maybe, as Dr. Debi has talked to us about, maybe we've faced some challenges and that we have come out of that, right, with some freshness and some vibrancy and some energy. And now we just need to do some reinvention. So what is reinvention? Reinvention is described as a makeover, right? We change a part of ourselves that's no longer serving us. And so why should we reinvent ourselves? Why do we even think about rebranding? And it's vital to our health and happiness. For example, a midlife career change can improve your brain cognition. It helps with your overall well-being and some longevity. And it gives you positivity, and it helps us explore growth, right? We can learn new parts of us that we haven't discovered or thought about, or we've pushed way down because we just haven't had the strength maybe to bring those out, or maybe we didn't feel like those were great strengths of ours, where others really do see those as great strengths. So there's many reasons on why we should reinvent ourselves or rebranding. So maybe put that in the chat, some things on why you feel like you need to rebrand or do a refresh of who you are. So how long does it take to do reinvention? So I looked at some studies, and it says on average it takes 66 days for it to feel automatic for us. So again, a refresh or a rebrand of who you are as a person is going to take a lot longer. But if you start changing some habits or some things you're doing, in about 66 days, they say it's going to feel a little bit more automatic for you. So all right, so I took the word Kathleen's talking about, dare. I love that word, right? We need to be more daring. We need to be more bold. We need to just, put ourselves out there and have some more energy. And what is personal branding? So I define it as owning that experience that others have with you at every touch point, right? It's that whole experience others have with you. If you think of Starbucks, their brand isn't coffee. Their brand is a place to go meet and have a connection or have a meeting. And coffee just happens to be part of that meeting. So just think about that experience that you're creating as a person, right? So I took the word dare and I broke it into some words that will help us think about, how do we rebrand? How do we create a new personal brand or up-level our brand? And so the first word is defining. I talked a little bit about that at the beginning. How do you define yourself, right? What is that word that you want others to use when they think of you? Write that down. Write it down now on a piece of paper. And if you don't know what that word is, start asking others. Take an inventory of how you're coming across. Ask Kathleen, ask somebody, ask a mentor, ask a leader, ask your friends, ask your family. Start gathering all those words that people use to describe you, and pay attention to some of those words that they're using. And if you see alignment with all of these words, then you're coming across pretty consistently, right? Pretty intentionally. But if you see they're kind of all across the board, then you have a little bit of work to do. You have to define yourself before others define you. Because if you don't, you risk that chance of them defining you in a way that likely is not accurate for how you want people to think about you. So again, defining yourself, what's your word? Take inventory of how you're coming across and align that word with your strengths. And you can ask people, what are those strengths you see in me? And pay attention to what people ask you consistently to do. Do they ask you always maybe some input on developing a strategy? Do they ask you, maybe you're super detailed about different things, so they ask you to help with that? Whatever that is, start paying attention to how people approach you and what they're asking you. So again, D is defining yourself. You need to have that done first. And defining yourself could very much be what Dr. Debi talks about as well, right? That internal self-evaluation of who you are, your values, your strengths, all that needs to come out and be showcased through all the other touch points in your life. All right, so we're going to move on to A. A stands for aesthetics, your visual ID. I talked about you could be leaving money on the table with how you're coming across. And how you're coming across, like it or not, one of the first things is your appearance, right? Your appearance when we meet you in person, or your appearance on a Zoom call, how you're showing up on a Zoom, right? Did you just crawl out of bed, right? Or are there, do you look like you want to be there? I make sure anytime I'm on a Zoom call, just have a soft smile on your face. Look like you're interested, look like you're happy to be there. All that ties into how people make assumptions of who you are internally. So, I would love it if people didn't judge people, but we all do it. It's human nature. We do it even when we're house shopping, right? We drive by a house and say, hey, does that have curb appeal? Does it look like I want to open the door and see what's inside? Sometimes we just do a drive-by because it doesn't have curb appeal to us. So pay attention to your curb appeal. So again, your curb appeal can be your appearance, can be how you're showing up in Zoom, also your brand attributes. So what does that mean? That just means, ladies, if you have a business, defining coming up with your logo colors. There's different colors that you wear and different colors that you use, send different messages. Again, in branding, say the color red is a very powerful color. It's very striking, but it also raises blood pressure. So we know something exciting is going to happen when we see red. Even like the stop sign is red. So it alerts us to have attention. Blue, we've heard, is a very corporate color. It's very trustworthy. It's very loyal. I wore blue today because I want you to trust what I'm saying. I did that intentionally, but I threw on some of my red because that's part of my brand color. And I wanted to have a little bit more power. So I brought in some red. And there's other different colors. There's pink is very nurturing. It's very feminine. It's very soft. Brown is very down to earth. It's very trustworthy. If you need to have a hard communication or a hard talk with somebody, you might want to throw some brown on. So those are just, I could go on and on, do a whole session on color psychology, but just know that different colors that you wear and the colors that you use on your brand, in your PowerPoint slides, your logos, all that send a message, and you have to be mindful of that. They're just subtle messages that are sent. So so we've defined yourself, we've come up with your aesthetics, you have to pay attention to that. And then R is for reach, your influence. How are you showing up influential? You know, people need to know you before they need you. So you have to show up, right? You have to show up in networking events. You have to show up online. You have to show up on social media. Maybe you have a blog. Think of the different ways that you have reach and influence. And I ran across a really great article that's called The Science of People. And she talks about what is influence. And I love her definition. So I'm going to read it. I have it right here in front of me. So what is influence? People ask themselves 4 questions when they're defining if somebody is influential. Am I interested in hearing more from them? Number 1. Number 2, do I believe in them or want to follow them? Number 3, what do I say? What do I do different now that I've heard that person speak? Have they made me change a habit? Have they made me change my way of thinking? And when this person speaks, how do I feel? How do they make me feel? So I think those are some great questions that you can kind of come back even to you when you think about, maybe answer those for yourself. Like, how do you want people to feel after you've spoken? You know, just come up with those answers and just do some self-reflection. And people with influence, they are leaders, right? They have a point of view. Kathleen talks so much about having a point of view, and I appreciate that so much, because in my early years and in my early part of my career, I didn't have a point of view. I was actually afraid to come up and speak about my point of view on different things. So you have to really, dig down and figure out what your point of view is. And I'm sure Kathleen can help you with that. And also, influential people have coaches, right? You have a mentor, you have people that help you through things. So we've talked about defining yourself. We've talked about the aesthetics of your personal brand. We've talked about your reach and influence of your personal brand. And then execute, right? E is for execute, bringing your brand to life through that visual element, through your verbals and your experience that people have with you. So there's many ways that we can create a brand that is more in alignment with who we are. And the good news is we all have a personal brand, but the bad news can be we all have a personal brand, and we want to make sure that we are intentional with it and that we're consistent with it and that we always show up as ourselves, right? We don't ever want to come across as inauthentic. And if I meet you in person, I should never be surprised because I've already Googled you online. I've interacted with you maybe online. I've researched you online. And if how you're showing up online isn't consistent with how you are in person, there's going to be a disconnect and you're going to lose trust. So always be you, always be intentional, and always consistent.
Thank you, Sheila. Let's take ourselves off mute. Give Sheila some applause here. Woohoo! Yes, yes. So we'd like to thank you so much. Wow. Ladies, was this tremendous or what? Daring mighty things together, bringing the best of the best that share, having your wing woman, your co-pilot, on a program together to talk about important things. Because I don't know about you, I never was taught this stuff. I had to learn it, in the last many years. So let's have Dr. Debi and Sheila take some questions here. I'd like to spotlight the two of you. And so if you would like to use the reactions button at the very bottom, and we'd love to take your questions, or if you have a question, put it in the chat, and know that we've just got a few minutes for questions. Debi and Sheila, you'd be open to answering questions offline as well, wouldn't you?
Sure, absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Because we want to get on LinkedIn after this. One of our calls to action is we're going to put in the LinkedIn C-Suite Network Coaches and Consulting Council page. And we're going to ask a question is, what will you dare to do? So dare mighty things together. So we want to get that chat going when we complete here about that. So daring mighty things. Deb Creer, esteemed faculty member, C-Suite Network Women's Coaching and Consulting Council. So glad you're here. What question do you have?
You know me, I always raise my hand. In fact, let me undo that now so that it doesn't confuse things. So I'm kind of going through this process of, am I going to rebrand? Am I going to whatever? And so my question is for Sheila. If I were to post on, say, Facebook, which I've got, 3,000 friends, and say, define, give one word for me. Am I going to get so overwhelmed that I just totally mess things up? Or is that okay?
I think that's okay, right? I mean, I think you're going to take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I hope nobody says evil words. I mean,
Oh, we're going to love you up, Deb.
If I get the B word, I'm going to go, unfollow.
Good to get all, I mean, it's good to get, you're going to get right. People are going to be nice,
Okay.
right? When they're putting it out there for everybody else to see. And I think that's fine, right? I think you want those positive words. So I absolutely would do that, but I also would just ask others, or you could just create a really simple Survey Monkey, right?
Okay, true.
Anonymous, just send it out and just say, hey, I'm working on a rebranding effort. I'm trying to come up with my brand personality. And then just send it out and so they know that it's anonymous, right?
Okay.
So send it out to 50.
So if they want to call me the B word, they're okay.
Yeah. They're not going to.
You never know.
Yeah, just like figuring out what those strengths are.
Okay.
So.
Well, and I just thought, it'll be interesting just to see, as you were saying, what do people think?
Mm-hmm. When I do a in-person talk, we go around and we write down words. We interact with somebody, we write down words, and we have stickers and we put it on their backs, right? And so if you're in a group of like 200 people, it's interesting because a lot of people don't know people. Or if you're in a group of 20, like an intimate department at a company, it still works, right? If you know each other well, or if you don't know each other well. And it's so funny that they, you have to write down your word first, and then you take those stickers off your back and you kind of look at them, and it's just really helpful and eye-opening. So it's a great place to start. It's where you start even with a corporate brand. What's our brand personality? How do we want people to think about us? What are those words that we want used to describe us?
And very nice, Sheila. And could I ask you, Debi, a lot of times in my experience doing this fabulous exercise with Sheila in a group when she's keynoting, people say really nice, powerful things. And sometimes it's hard to accept it and to really own it. Debi, how would you say How do we do that?
It's a hard thing, but I look at it as a gift. If someone were to give you a gift, you would say, oh, no, 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 no. You'd accept the gift and say, thank you. And when someone's complimenting you or just saying something kind, it's a gift. And it's helpful to respond in that way. And when we don't receive it, it's like someone's not receiving our gift, or we wouldn't want that. So let's not do that either. And I love that Sheila said that pink is nurturing and brown is trustworthy, because I'm looking at my cherry blossoms over here. Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, when we see those words and they're feeling nurtured, we take them as a gift. And it could also be such a gift to say, if I'm not fully embracing this or owning this, what could be in the way of that, and to, consult experts like the two of you about that. It's a gift in itself, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Good. Thank you very much, Deb. Love the question. Love the answers. Gloria, please jump in. What is your question of our two wonderful, wonderful expert speakers today?
Sure. For me, I think this is directed at Dr. Debi. Do you think that there are times where people go through betrayal, but they don't recognize it as betrayal? Because when I look at the steps that you talked about, those 5, I can think of a time through work where I didn't have the confidence of a leader, that didn't have confidence in me. And I could see where I went through a variety of these things that then really did ultimately end in the healing and rebirth and a different me. But at the time, I didn't think of it as a betrayal, although my husband certainly did.
Yeah. It's such a great question. A repeat betrayal, and remember how I said before, a repeat betrayal is a sign of an unhealed betrayal. We keep getting those opportunities. And it's really when we get the mother of all betrayals where we say, that's it. I'm never doing this. I'm not tolerating that. Whatever it is, lesson learned. It doesn't have to repeat itself. So whatever happened in that final betrayal where there was a powerful lesson that you learned, that was the lesson that you were supposed to learn the first time.
Yeah, right.
Right. But you just weren't ready, and you needed, it's like you get the tap and then you get the, and you got the
slap upside the head.
That's it. And then you learn. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. Great. Very good. So Sheila and Debi, parting words as we conclude our program today. And let's take ourselves off mute. Really great. Wow. Woohoo. Love to get your final words.
Sheila, why don't you go first?
Well, gosh, I just feel like we just need to love ourselves, right? We just have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're loving ourselves, making sure that we're standing firm on our values, and bringing all that love, what I call my love bubble, right? Bringing that love bubble out to other people when you interact with them.
Excellent.
And I would
love
say
bubble going here, don't we?
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
And I would say you're so much more powerful than you know. And it's usually when you have an opportunity to see that, that's what strengthens it. I forgot, I think Eleanor Roosevelt had that amazing quote about women, like women are like a tea bag, right? If you want to see how strong she is, put her in hot water, right? Something like that. But that's really the truth. And it's when we're in those opportunities, we see what we're made of, and we're always stronger than we think.
Excellent. Great parting words. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Really loved every second of it. And as we complete, I'd like to go in and, again, thank you. Wow. Thank you, Sheila Anderson and Debi Silber. Thank you for bringing all this great wisdom to our community and to our group, because we want to dare mighty things for ourselves. So our curious question in LinkedIn is going to be, what does dare mighty things for yourself mean to you? And we've already started the chat in LinkedIn. Jump in there and give some visibility to the thing that you want to accomplish, the things that you want to become, the contributions you want to make. And as you know, we take a firm stand in the Women's Coaching and Consulting Council. Our values are relevancy, reach, reciprocity, respect. And we have a we first value system where we're co-accelerating and collaborating with each other. We're so grateful that you're here. And, our council is growing. Come join us. We've got special programs. We have a certification program, designation. We are growing, expanding, and we are daring mighty things. And as we complete, the world needs you and your light in the world. It's time to come out of the COVID cave, ladies and gentlemen, and all of the people that are watching this on the replay. It's time to come out of the cave now. We need to shine our light. We need to dare mighty things. And we know in our council that we're better together. The strength of the pack is in the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is in the pack. So come join us tomorrow, day 2. Dare mighty things. Today was for yourself. Tomorrow is for your business and your career. The next day, Thursday, is dare mighty things for your communities and the world on Friday. So big thanks to Sheila A. Anderson, Dr. Debi Silber, Claudia Harvey, and Lisa L. Levy are tomorrow. Catherine Celery and I get to share the podium with Catherine on Thursday. And then Friday, closing up our program and doing it in a very, very big, daring way, Andrea Austin and Trisha Ben. So we're so excited. Schedule your one-on-one conversation with me. I would love to hear what you would like to dare in the way of dare mighty things for your business, your career, your life, and for the world. So we'll be following up with you. And just curious, put it on our LinkedIn page. What was your biggest takeaway from today? Put it on the LinkedIn page. We're going to prompt you. We want to get your voice in there. And we so appreciate you attending, participating. And again, thank you to our speakers today, our featured speakers, Sheila Anderson, Debi Silber. Thank you. Thank you. Have a beautiful day. Lots of love and kisses to you. Dare mighty things today. Take care. Bye-bye.